At my husband Michael's celebration where we shared our pregnancy news, things took an unexpected turn involving his sister, Ellie, which ultimately led to serious consequences for her. I've been married to Michael for 7 years, and our relationship has been mostly wonderful, except for the complications brought by his sister. Initially, Ellie and I got along well, but over time, my perception of her changed as I realized how negative, manipulative, and toxic she could be. My efforts to keep the peace were significant, especially given Ellie's history of meddling in Michael's romantic life. Even after we started dating, she continually attempted to undermine our relationship by bringing up Michael's ex-girlfriends and suggesting he reconnect with them, behavior that both Michael and I found strange and unnecessary. Ellie's invasive tactics didn't stop there. She would monitor my social media activities obsessively and make unfounded accusations to Michael, which we both dismissed as ridiculous. Despite this, when Michael and I decided to move in together and later got engaged, Ellie's antagonism escalated. Her behavior became increasingly unacceptable, culminating at our engagement party where she dramatically walked out after feeling slighted that she wasn't informed of the engagement before everyone else. Her subsequent actions included sending me a nearly threatening message about being a good wife to Michael, claiming her place as the predominant woman in his life. This bizarre claim, along with her continued hostility, led me to decide she was no longer welcome at our wedding. This confrontation seemed to push Ellie over the edge. She became less involved in our lives, which was a relief, but her resentment lingered. Eventually, her actions at a recent event led to a situation where she now faces legal consequences and is going through a divorce. This drastic turn of events is a sad but necessary resolution to the ongoing drama she created in our lives, illustrating the severe impact of her actions not only on her relationships, but also on her personal situation. During a celebration where my husband Michael and I announced our pregnancy, his sister Ellie was noticeably taken aback when I finally stood up to her negative behavior. My mother-in-law was equally upset with Ellie and supported my stance. After the event, Ellie complained to Michael, claiming that I had embarrassed her and he should control me since we were to be married. Michael, standing firm, told her she needed to apologize or she would not be welcome at our wedding. Ellie eventually sent a half-hearted apology, which I chose not to respond to due to the stress of wedding planning and a desire to avoid further drama. Despite my reservations, Ellie attended the wedding, shockingly dressed in a black, floor-length gown complete with a veil, as though attending a funeral. This was her way of expressing that she was mourning the loss of her brother to me. Her attire and behavior were so inappropriate that my husband confronted her at the reception. She defensively claimed she could wear what she wanted, but our situation escalated until Michael's parents asked her to leave for causing a scene, sparing me further embarrassment. After our son John was born, I made the decision to keep Ellie away from him, a decision supported by Michael and his parents. They understood my concerns given her past actions. However, following a tragic miscarriage Ellie experienced, we tried to extend an olive branch, inviting her to spend time with John, hoping it might bring some positivity to her life. Initially, Ellie seemed to change for the better, showing genuine affection towards John, but it wasn't long before her old patterns of negativity and victimhood resurfaced. This year, Ellie planned her own wedding and pointedly excluded us. When confronted, she admitted she feared I would retaliate for her past actions by dressing inappropriately at her wedding, like she had at mine. Her admission was a manipulation tactic. When Michael discussed this with his parents, they decided not to support her wedding financially or attend, which led Ellie to reach out to me, tearfully asking for forgiveness. Although I was wary, I forgave her, hoping we could finally move past our issues. We attended her wedding, which initially seemed to go well. Unfortunately, it was not long before Ellie appeared at our doorstep, her marriage in turmoil, blaming her husband for their difficulties in conceiving. Despite her attempts to shift blame, I tried to offer support and advice, hoping she would take some responsibility for her own role in her marital issues. The cycle of drama with Ellie seems ongoing, but Michael and I continue to handle it with as much grace and patience as we can muster, always hoping for a better resolution. Whenever Ellie wasn't airing grievances about her husband, she'd obsess over our lives, concocting non-existent issues. For instance, I have a routine of hitting the gym each morning before work. On days when I'm running late, I bring my work clothes to change into after my workout and shower. Ellie noticed this and bombarded me with questions, seemingly puzzled why I need to shower or why I frequented the gym. I brushed it off, explaining that I like to stay fit and prefer not to arrive at work sweaty. She would just purse her lips and nod, seemingly dissatisfied with my answers. Things eventually smoothed over between her and Mark, and she moved back in with him. One weekend, my husband and I joined his parents, Mill and Paul, for lunch, along with Ellie and Mark. We decided to leave our son John with a babysitter, knowing he'd prefer playing at home to sitting through long adult conversations. During lunch, Mill shared a story about a friend who divorced after discovering her husband's infidelity and subsequently claimed half of his assets. Out of the blue, Ellie asked my husband if we had signed a prenuptial agreement. The table went silent. She ignored me entirely and waited for my husband's response. He directly told her that since we both had good incomes, we didn't see the need for a prenup. Ellie scoffed, hinting that infidelity was rampant and he might be caught off guard any day. I was taken aback and demanded to know what she was implying. She then accused me of meeting someone secretly, given my habit of carrying a change of clothes for the gym. She claimed it was her duty as Michael's sister to alert him. Paul and Mill immediately defended us, criticizing her for stirring up trouble and meddling in matters that didn't concern her. Not stopping there, Ellie cruelly joked whether our son John was really Michael's, since she thought he didn't resemble him. This accusation made my husband visibly furious. In a rare display of anger, he confronted Ellie, telling her that her behavior was the reason she wasn't a mother, suggesting it was better that way given her character. Everyone at the table was stunned into silence by his outburst. Reduced to tears, Ellie looked to Mark for support, but he remained silent. Overwhelmed, she ran off to the restroom. After a moment, Mill approached to calm my husband down. He apologized for the distress his sister's words caused me. I reassured him, understanding the frustration she had provoked. I appreciated his public defense, having endured Ellie's behavior for years. Once he had settled, he apologized to Mark, but continued to ignore Ellie. After that day, we decided to cut contact with Ellie completely. Her behavior was impacting both my husband and me, and it was healthier to block her entirely. Mill and Paul later discussed the lunch with us, agreeing that Ellie had crossed the line and understanding why their usually composed son had reacted so strongly. It's been a year since we last spoke to Ellie, and since then, life has been much smoother. Recently, I discovered some uplifting news, but with Ellie out of our lives, we've been able to enjoy our peace without her interference. I recently discovered I was unexpectedly pregnant. My husband and I were thrilled by the news, feeling immensely blessed to be expanding our family. We decided to announce our joy during my husband's upcoming birthday party, which his parents, Mill and Paul, plan to host in their backyard, inviting close family and friends. Unexpectedly, Ellie, my husband's sister, appeared at the party. She had been out of touch since our last uncomfortable encounter, so her presence was a surprise. Upon arrival, she embraced Michael, expressing regret for their past conflicts and missing him. It was clear she wanted to mend fences, insisting she owed me an apology for her previous accusations. She explained she had been attending therapy and realized how wrong her actions were. Although skeptical of her sincerity, I chose not to confront her in front of the guests and simply acknowledged her apology. Mill and Paul were equally surprised by Ellie's unannounced appearance and offered to ask her to leave if we felt uncomfortable. However, Michael preferred to avoid a scene, so we let her stay. Throughout the event, Ellie was unusually positive and sociable, which seemed at odds with her usual demeanor. But she claimed therapy was helping her change, and I tentatively gave her the benefit of the doubt. When it came time to cut the cake, Michael delivered a touching speech, expressing his gratitude for another year of life and his joy in our relationship. Flushed with happiness, we then shared our exciting news. We were expecting a baby. The announcement was met with tears and congratulations from everyone except Ellie, whose reaction was delayed and visibly upset, which worried me briefly about potential drama. Later, as lunch was being served, my family insisted I stay seated while they helped with the food, considering my pregnancy. Just then, Ellie approached with a plate for me, enthusiastically claiming she wanted to serve me as a gesture of goodwill for past grievances. I accepted the plate graciously, but before I could eat, I noticed she had included shrimp, which I am severely allergic to. Disappointed but cautious, I decided to get a different plate myself. While I was switching plates, Mark, who had also been at the party, came over to congratulate me on the pregnancy. I explained why I hadn't eaten the shrimp, and he kindly offered to take it off my hands since he enjoyed shrimp. I thanked him and went to get myself another plate. Moments later, Mark began to feel ill and vomited, causing a stir among the guests. Michael and Ellie rushed to his aid, concerned about his sudden sickness. The incident cast a shadow over the celebration, and it left me questioning whether the shrimp had been a mere oversight by Ellie or something more intentional, given her history. The uncertainty lingered as we continued to navigate our complex family dynamics, hoping for peace but remaining wary of potential conflicts. Mark clutched at his throat, his face contorted in pain, as everyone around gasped in horror, realizing something was terribly wrong. He collapsed, unconscious, prompting a frenzied rush to call an ambulance. As medics whisked him away to the hospital, the confusion and fear were palpable. Ellie, his wife, was beside herself with grief and shock. She checked the plate of food, her eyes wide with horror. Turning to me, she asked if I had given my plate to Mark. I nodded, the gravity of the situation sinking in. Ellie burst into tears, her glances flicking between anger and despair. Later, the hospital confirmed our worst fears. Mark had been poisoned. I was overwhelmed with guilt and fear, knowing that the food on that plate was originally meant for me. Could this have been an attempt on my life? And if so, was my unborn child also a target? My husband, Michael, and my in-laws, Mill and Paul, were unaware of these chilling details. The police took the remaining food for analysis, trying to determine the toxin that caused Mark's distress. Meanwhile, Ellie stayed at the hospital. Her worry for Mark mingled with unspoken questions about what had really happened. Back home, the phone rang incessantly. Family and friends seeking news on Mark's condition and speculating on the possible culprit. Mill and Paul, deeply shaken, decided to stay with us, fearing the safety of their own home. I was tormented by the thought of revealing the truth to everyone that the poison plate was initially given to me by Ellie. With the possibility of a police investigation looming, I knew I would have to disclose everything. The idea of what Ellie might be capable of terrified me. I couldn't risk our safety or that of our children. In the flurry of comments on my social media post about the incident, I found some solace, yet the guilt of not discarding the plate haunted me. My husband noticed my distress but was unaware of its true extent. Determined to clarify the situation, I planned to discuss everything with my family. Thankfully, Mill and Paul had security cameras installed, which might provide crucial evidence from the party. During a tense dinner with Michael, Mill, and Paul, I took a deep breath and explained everything from the shrimp on the plate to Mark's subsequent poisoning. The shock was clear on their faces. Mill, ever practical, suggested we review the security camera footage to confirm my account. As we watched the footage, it clearly showed Ellie serving me the plate. The undeniable proof of her actions was a bitter confirmation of her potential malice. Michael was silent, processing the betrayal by his sister. The air was heavy with the implications of what we had discovered. After discussing the next steps, we decided to support Mark in his recovery and ensure our family's safety from any further threats from Ellie. The betrayal was deep, but the clarity brought by the truth gave us a path forward to protect ourselves and handle the situation with the seriousness it warranted. After viewing the security footage that unmistakably showed Ellie giving me the poison plate, the atmosphere in the room was charged with emotion. Michael was visibly shaken, now fully understanding the extent of his sister's malice. Mill and Paul were horrified, unable to fathom why their daughter would resort to such dangerous lengths to sow discord. The silence that followed was heavy with disbelief and sorrow as we grappled with the grim reality of Ellie's actions. Recognizing the severity of the situation, my in-laws decided to hand over the security footage to the police. This wasn't just a family matter anymore, it was a serious crime. Paul and Michael planned to visit Mark in the hospital as soon as he was well enough. Mark would need to decide if he wanted to press charges against Ellie. The thought of how close I had come to being the victim of her plot haunted me, leaving me sleepless and anxious about Mark's condition. After a tumultuous month, I'm finally able to share more news. As a pregnant woman dealing with these shocks, it's been a trying time. Following our decision, my in-laws handed the incriminating footage to the police, who acted swiftly. Upon being confronted with the evidence, Ellie was arrested. Overcome with emotion, she confessed to her actions without denial. My husband spoke with Mark, who was understandably stunned by the revelation. Despite the familial ties, Michael encouraged him to press charges, emphasizing that he would have our support regardless of his decision. In the end, Mark chose not only to press charges, but also to file for divorce. Ellie reached out to Mill and Paul, tearfully pleading for forgiveness and trying to leverage her own pregnancy as a reason for them to bail her out. However, Paul, fed up with her manipulative tactics, informed her that they were done enabling her behavior. It was time for her to face the consequences of her actions. Mill is heartbroken over the circumstances, but recognizes that Ellie's actions are indefensible. The police investigation confirmed that Ellie had deliberately tampered with the food, intending to harm me, which tragically affected her own husband instead. She is now facing multiple charges, including tampering with food, endangering life, and causing bodily harm. The family is navigating this complex and painful situation as best we can, focusing on supporting Mark through his recovery and dealing with the legal implications of Ellie's actions. Ellie has been desperately pleading with Mark not to press charges, trying to shift the blame onto me. However, Mark remains resolute, his mind firmly set on seeking justice. Her court hearing is fast approaching, and it looks like she won't be able to evade the consequences this time. He's still unaware of what his aunt has done, but Michael and I plan to sit down with him soon to explain everything. We believe it's crucial for him to understand and be aware of such situations, though it will undoubtedly be a tough conversation. I'm also attending regular ultrasound appointments every 3 weeks as my pregnancy progresses. We've decided not to find out the gender of our baby, opting for a surprise instead. My parents are fully aware of the situation with Ellie and have become incredibly protective. They're concerned about the potential psychological impact on me during my pregnancy and have encouraged me to start therapy. I've realized that, despite appearing normal, I've developed a deep-seated fear of consuming any food that I haven't prepared myself. Thankfully, Michael is very supportive, helping me navigate through this fear, which I hope to overcome soon. It's been 8 months since. Ellie is now in prison, having been found guilty on all charges. I chose not to attend her court proceedings, but my in-laws kept me informed. In court, Ellie confessed that her actions were fueled by jealousy. She had always hoped one of her friends would marry Michael, and seeing him with me was unbearable for her. When we announced our pregnancy at Michael's birthday, which coincided with her own pregnancy news following a previous miscarriage, she felt overshadowed and acted out of a misguided sense of retaliation. Ellie admitted to adding a small amount of rat poison to my food, hoping it would make me ill enough to be hospitalized but not cause serious harm. She never anticipated that I would pass my plate to Mark, leading to his poisoning. Despite her plea for a lighter sentence by blaming hormones and claiming no intent to cause severe harm, the judge was unmoved and she received a prison sentence. Meanwhile, Mark has finalized his divorce from Ellie and remains a cherished part of our family. We've included him in our activities and have had many heartfelt conversations. He reassured me that what happened was not my fault, which has helped me cope with the guilt I felt over the incident. Michael and I recently welcomed a baby girl into our family. Despite the dark shadows of the past months, her arrival has brought immense joy and light into our lives. Our son John is thrilled to be a big brother and adores his little sister, showering her with love and affection. Watching our children bond fills our hearts with gratitude. Throughout all these challenges, both sets of our parents have been incredible, supporting us as we navigate this new chapter in our lives.